Okay, in this short video, I'm going to illustrate some of the current planetary activity leading up to spring. Why I'm doing that in part is because there's a lot of activity of planets between the 16th and spring equinox, which occurs this year on the 20th here in North America in 2018. And so, yeah, it's just a rather dynamic little period, but there's some very key aspects that occurred that are linked to the new moon. So whatever is active at the time of the new moon plays a special role. So in any case, what we have is March 16th, 2018, and we have 0 hour midnight in Greenwich, England. The reason I do that is because that marks the 0 hour. And then from there, you know, depending on your time zone, it goes up or goes down an hour, etc. So here on the east coast of Canada, well, in the Montreal area, we're 5 hours ahead, and on the west coast of Canada, you're 8, etc. So now the basic thing you're seeing is there's the sun in Pisces. And by the way, this chart is representing a solar chart, which means the house cusps are 0 and always representing the sun. The sun's very much the star of the show in Western astrology, the king, if you like, and everybody else and all the planets sort of hover around it, as it were, in terms of importance, that is. Now, well, literally too, in the heliocentric understanding of things. Now, we also will see an equal house system with the 0 degrees of the sun once again, because the location, time, place, date of birth determines the ascendant and the house cusps, and that's why it's good to know those when you get an astrology reading done. You don't have to, by the way. You can do a reading without knowing the time of birth, but it sharpens the picture, definitely, if you do have it. So that's important to consider. Now, so we do that. We're seeing an equal house, 0 degree house cusp chart. It's just a very generic way of looking at what's going on, and it gives you a more pure perspective in some respects, one that kind of addresses everybody at the same time, shall we say. Okay, now I'm just going to advance this, but what you're seeing so far is Mars at 29 degrees. Now, planets arrive at 29 degrees in their cycle as the last degree. There's only 30 degrees in a sign, 360, a circle divided by 12 equals 30. So there's 12 signs of 30 degrees. So when a planet reaches 30 degrees, 29 degrees, excuse me, it reaches what's called its critical point. It has to now overcome. It's almost like making a hurdle over the border. It has to get through the border, shall we say, and somewhat critical in its own way. Especially that's true if you have a natal planet at 29 degrees. So if you look in your chart and you have any planet at 29 or an angle, ascendant, descendant, IC, then it's rather significant, and that's an area in your life where you have some extra work to do, and, you know, with your free will, you may well be doing that very well, but yes, it's an area that you have some overcoming, so usually people, you know, work a little harder there anyway. Okay, so I'm going to advance this 1 degree, you know, I'm going to animate this chart, which means I activate it so that it's live, and now I can move it in increments by each click of the mouse here. You know, I'm going to move it 1 hour at a time. So you'll notice ever so slightly if you watch the moon, watch it moving by degrees. That's how, so the moon moves approximately 1 degree per hour at this particular rate. You can also pay a little attention to Mars. Watch as the moon moves closer to the sun over the course of the 16th. We're already at 10 a.m. there. Okay, ever so incrementally, you'll see the aspect lines changing. Yes, you see that? That is how quickly the aspects can change in the course of a day. So we're already on March 17th here, St. Patrick's Day, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. You'll see there's the moon moving incrementally closer and closer, and oh, it just went past. So I'm going to back it up there. I'm going to pause for a moment. We're just prior to the new moon. It's 1 p.m. in Greenwich, England. It just so happens the new moon occurred there at 1:11, which is rather special for this day and year because it's an 11 year, 2018, when added equals 11. I've been writing a lot about that, and that equals what's called a universal 11 year. Quite special because 11 is a master number, or it's the initial master number. where 22 is like a higher octave of that 11, but 11 is like the base, the core. And 11 is very much a metaphysical number linked to the sign of Aquarius, by the way, the 11th sign of the zodiac. And it's not that linear. It's not only to the sign of Aquarius, it has other factors too. It's actually shares close association also with Gemini, as we see in the symbol of Gemini, right there. You can see the 11 hidden in there, and that can be interpreted as right and left brain. But we'll leave the discussion of 11 alone for now, although there's a lot of great things to learn about it, and I'll do another video about that sometime soon. So now what we see here once again is the new moon in Pisces, just about to occur on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. All rather exciting. At the time of the new moon, and we're going to click one more, and you'll see once the moon goes past the sun, you know you had the new moon. I could go into incremental degrees. In fact, if I go by minutes, you'll see here, I'm just going to go backwards. You'll see the second hand, the minute hand on the moon changing. It's not going to take that long. Very quickly here, it's going to be at 26:53, and I'm going to stop it right there. So you see that's the exact 26:53 of sun and moon exact conjunction. That's what a new moon is. Now, what's significant about all of this is that the Mars is at 29 degrees at the time of the new moon. That's the significant thing to consider. We look at key things like a conjunction of two planets, and basically the new moon every month provides like what I call a cosmic brick in the wall. There's a lot of them, but each one is important. Just imagine you have a wall without a brick, or missing a brick, I should say, and you kind of get a point that, oh yeah, that's kind of important too, isn't it? Yes, each one's important, and they're all part of the now of life. So now what you see here with Mars at 29 Sag is that it's in square to the Sun Moon. Now, that's not a crisis, but it does mean that over the course of this entire cycle, within what's called the new moon seed, what you're seeing here, this chart, would be the picture on the seed packet, shall we say. And although all the planets keep moving, and that's part of the wave and particle principle of astrology. From the standpoint of the wave, all the planets keep moving and they're changing aspects. There's always new things happening all the time. But from the particle perspective, we can actually isolate a moment in time, which occurs usually when we have a conjunction of any two planets, and the sun and moon is the most common, as I just mentioned, and or when a planet enters a new sign. Those are the two main times: planet entering a new sign, an ingress, that's what it's called, an ingress, and a conjunction of two planets. Okay, now you're also seeing what's rather special and exciting about this moment is you have a Mercury-Venus conjunction. In fact, I wasn't paying as much attention, but I'm going to go back really quickly in time and watch Mercury and Venus over the course of this period of time. You're going to notice that, okay, I see. Mercury was moving fast there. Venus is moving fast because Mercury is slowing down right now. Yes, now I recall. It's slowing down. I know that, but there's lots to always think about in astrology. You're juggling a lot of facts. So what you're seeing now is we're now on the 17th. We've moved past the new moon. We're in the evening now. Let's say we're in Greenwich tonight. And the moon has entered Aries by this time, and Mars has already entered its new sign of Capricorn. So that's rather significant, by the way. Just not overly important, but remember at 29 degrees in the new moon chart, it's significant. And Mars in Sagittarius is kind of well placed, actually. Fire planet in a fire sign, and it's very assertive. It has a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. So that's the high side of it. And there's more to say about this, but I'm just going to basically point out that Mars there at the critical degree at the time of the new moon is noteworthy, and it provides something to overcome for us all this month. How it relates to you personally or to any person, and I've mentioned this many times, but a person is any legal entity in the eyes of the law. That can be an individual like you and I, or it could be a nation, it could be a city, a province, a territory, a state, or it could be a company, an institution, etc. Any legal entity. Okay, really remember that has its own astrology chart. That's the main takeaway on that, and how the planets in the sky at any given moment, the transiting planets, relate, kind of correspond to that base planet, that what's called the natal chart, the radix chart. It's another word for it. The birth chart is another word. It has a few words, the natal birth radix chart. Anyway, how the planets in transit referred to it does indicate, synchronistic events, and that's what we're looking at. But remember, there's a generic perspective, what we're seeing when we look at the charts here, but there's also that collective, there's the specific person, every case on its own ground perspective. You really want to remember that. So the planetary energies affect every individual legal entity differently, and it's not the only measurement of destiny. The cycles of time are many in astrology, measures it at many levels. It's rather interesting. Call it octaves if you like. There's different techniques. On average, some astrologers just work with transits. It's a very sensational kind of fortune-telling astrology, in my opinion. More than not, though, most astrologers use about 5 systems. They overlap 5 different time cycle measurement techniques. Okay, so you want to be aware of that, and I certainly do, because it offers a much richer understanding of what's going on, etc. But the transits can be useful, especially in a pinch, if you want to really get the main outer events that are going on, and they are rather significant, etc. And okay, so that's what we want to say for there. And I'm going to continue here. We're going forward. We're on the March 17th. So you'll notice there's that moon moving. Venus is moving towards Mercury. Mercury's slow by now. The moon moving towards Venus there. Mars by now is in Capricorn, of course. We're now on the 18th. There's the sun. Now, the key takeaway here is that also, and I didn't quite mention this, at the time of the new moon, Mars was also in a close square aspect to Chiron, which it still is. And that was the key message I forgot to mention, but I'll mention it now. Mars at a 90-degree angle to Chiron is a part of that 29-degree theme. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. And so you understand, wow, when you have a square, it's a 90-degree angle, it's a very dynamic activating principle. And so Mars at a critical degree, activating Chiron in Pisces, I basically interpret Chiron is the archetype of the wounded healer. The basic story is that wherever it is in your chart, and it depends on your destiny, by the way, but in order to heal the wound which it represents, you have to heal others of that wound. And that healing may come out in just your everyday interactions, or you may more, literally, deliberately be some form of healer or repair person or something. So it can go in that direction: repairs, healing, fixing, etc. Okay, there's a lot of kind of levels, but basically it represents a wound. So for us all, Mars at 29 degrees Sagittarius squaring Chiron represents a turning point. And what's also significant, and I'll be showing this more in other videos soon, is that Chiron will soon be entering Aries. Chiron spends about 5 years in a sign on average, but it does have an elliptical orbit, so it can be a little faster, a little slower, depending on the sign it's in. But we do know basically at this point that Chiron in April will be entering into the next sign of Aries. And that's very, very significant, partially because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. And, its equinox is celebrated as, spring equinox is celebrated as the astrological new year, by the way, which occurs this year on March the 20th. So, P.S., the astrological new year occurs on spring equinox every year. And because, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. That's basically why. And so when a planet enters Aries, it's significant because it enters a whole new round on the basis of the zodiac cycle. Okay, it's pretty obvious. It goes for Aries is the first sign and Pisces is the 12th. So when a planet enters a new sign, it starts a new 12 sign round. Now, of course, what we have here currently, see there's 4 planets in Aries here: Uranus, which began back in 2011, by the way, and will continue until 2019. Then there's Mercury, Moon, and Venus more recently having entered Aries. And I stopped there, this is March 18th, so basically tomorrow, where the moon will be conjunct Mercury exactly at that 15:15 there. And Venus, though, is really tightly in there. So this would be considered a triple conjunction. Uranus is there by sign. That's what we call a stellium by sign, but this is a conjunction of Venus, Moon, and Mercury by degree. Okay, so the sign influence is enough. It's like somebody in the room, but they're on the other side of the room while these three are closely chit-chatting about this and that and having a good little fun time together. Uranus in this case, as the metaphor goes, would be that individual, Uranus, by the way, on the far side of the room doing their own thing, not a part of the conversation, but still in the room. Okay, that's rather significant energetically and all of the other ways you might define what it feels like it means to have somebody in the same room, but not close by. They don't hear what you're saying, as the case may be. So, okay, so what we're seeing also at the time of that is the Sun-Chiron conjunction. And this is really significant and interesting for this time. So once again, I said earlier, when you have a conjunction of two planets, in this case, Sun and Chiron, you have the beginning of a new cycle. So this cycle is based, the cycles, by the way, are always based on the faster moving planet. Now, the Sun does just take 1 year to apparently orbit the Earth. So and Chiron will advance a little bit. So it'll be a bit more than 1 year by the time they conjunct again. So that's your basic takeaway, to know that it's starting a 1 year cycle, which is, again, significant. It does that every year, but because this is the last conjunction of the Sun to Chiron before Chiron enters Aries, that's significant for this time, because, Chiron's been in Pisces for about 5 years or so, and, so that's, the Sun connects to it. That is, I don't know exactly the number. I didn't do a close study on that, but 5 or perhaps 6 times since the last time it was in the previous sign of Aquarius. So that's the kind of special significance. Now, once again, it's activating something significant. Chiron, by the way, in Pisces is not so well placed. It kind of represents a wound more in the subconscious, and because this is a generic chart for all of us, we can interpret this as sort of a type of subconscious wound humanity is dealing with. And Pisces can at worst also represent a type of denial, because Pisces is the sign of the subconscious, by the way. I won't go deeply into that, although because the Sun is in Pisces at this time, it does afford a bit of luxury to do this. Interestingly, where Aries is like the baby, the newborn of the zodiac, and Aquarius is the elder, the senior citizen, if you like, but the elder on the high vibration of that word. Pisces is actually the sign of the soul between lives. By the way, and that's not often discussed as much as I think it should be. And that's where, in that respect, Pisces represents the subconscious mind. And that's where Pisceans are kind of special, but a little bit, people will say, kind of out there, but aware, but out there. It's an interesting, they're straddling two worlds. It's really true. I know, because that's my sun sign. Anyway, and Pisces can create a very imaginative energy, and the imagination power of Pisces is the main power of Pisces, and others include like compassion, etc. But imagination is the real takeaway, and imagination can be one's best friend or worst enemy, by the way. But if you can use your imagination power, well, that's going to be pretty awesome, and it can be used in many ways, from creative activity, but also to imagining what it's like to be in the other person's shoes. That could be sort of an element of empathy that Pisces exercises. It's not the same kind of empathy as Cancer nurture empathy, by the way. It can be, but generally not. It's more just I identify. okay, in a different sort of awareness way. So there's lots to be said about that, but as it is, we're seeing a conjunction between Sun and Chiron, and also a conjunction between Mercury, Moon, and Venus at this particular time. So those are some interesting little insights. Now let's take it a little further. Now watch as the Sun moves. Look at, you can watch in the upper corner if you like. It's the 19th by now. We're just going to click along and until we get to the 20th here. Oh, we are going by, yep, we're going by 1 hour per click. Watch the Sun now. I'm going to click a little faster. It's 29. There's the Sun at 29 over the course of some of Monday, the 19th, but most of the evening, really, for most people in most places, the late evening on the 19th, early morning on the 20th. But as the day goes, you'll see, and I'm going to stop right when the Sun enters Aries there. As you saw the whole chart jump, because this is based, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, on a solar chart, which means the ascendant matches the Sun's sign. Okay, so now what's significant basically is that on the day that the spring equinox, March 20th, 2018, at approximately 5:12 in Greenwich, England, I'm saying approximately because it was a bit earlier, and I'm not going to bother going into those incremental motions, but I just wanted to show you that. And so that's where spring begins, and we can look at also, because that's the ingress of another planet in a new sign, Aries, so we can look at what's going on. We see that Mercury-Venus conjunction. The moon by this time has moved on. It moves quickly. It doesn't stay very long. And the main thing to understand there is that at the time of the ingress of the Sun, Mercury-Venus conjunction. What's special about Mercury-Venus, by the way, is that together, when indicated in a chart, usually very often indicates some kind of artistic ability. So that's a nice consideration. Do you have Mercury-Venus conjunction? If you do, you probably know what I'm talking about, whether it's the art of communication or fine arts or what have you. It usually produces an artistic ability, basically. Okay. Now, what's also rather significant is at the time that the Sun enters Aries, it again is in square to Mars. So Mars is playing a really important role these days. Mars always is the planet of action. Sometimes people refer to Mars as the planet of desire, and I always think that is not it. Mars is the action upon desire. Venus represents desire. Okay, so Mars is the take action to obtain or achieve the, whatever is that which one is desiring. So that's where it's very proactive and takes the initiative and will blaze a trail if it must, etc. But at worst, Mars can get, kind of self-centered that way. Mars is the ruling planet of Aries. So it can kind of get selfish at worst and inconsiderate, so bent upon pursuing what it wants, it forgets what really, about others, or, it just becomes focused on sort of the game, the chase, the race, whatever it is, the pioneering adventure. But that's where the danger of Aries comes forward. So every sign has its, higher and lower or more challenging expressions, etc. Now, so be careful on that. So we're all going to be experiencing that over this period of time, and but when the Sun enters a new sign, that's that 1 month period, but also when it enters a new season, that's the significant also other consideration, is that the moment it does, it's the entire season, like in this case, spring, that will depict this chart energy, basically. Okay, and there's lots to say about it. We don't have enough time to do it all. There really is a lot of layers to astrology, as you can imagine, when you start to unravel the symbolic interpretation of all the planets and the implications, etc. So, pretty much going to leave it there for now. I hope there was a few takeaways in there, giving you a bit of insight about how astrology works and some of what's going on. And again, you can only take a generic perspective when you do sort of the astro weather. That's what this is basically called, because we're not looking at it and how juxtaposing it, shall we say, or relating it to a particular individual and a legal entity. I will be doing that more in the future, but and that's where it really starts getting interesting with, various places, like whether it's Canada, United States, or what have you, or people. I tend to not want to do that with people as a, invasion of privacy issue at worst, right? I don't like to do that. But with countries, well, we like to know, don't we? So, but watch this. I'm going to speed this up a bit. I'm going to jump ahead by weeks very quickly to give you a quick look at watch Chiron. Okay, that's what we're looking at, and also watch Uranus. These are far planets, okay, and they move rather slowly. So watch what's about to happen in the next number of, months, really. But watch as we jump 1 week at a time. Watch Chiron at 29 there. Well, okay, just jumped into Aries. We see mid-April, 1 month from now. Be aware of that. That's a significant ingress that we're seeing. Now watch, when it did, the sun was conjunct Uranus. What this suggests positively is there's like this awakening that is, at worst, will be like a wake-up call. There's some kind of awakening, some kind of wake-up call, some kind of new awareness. I say awareness because the sun really is the energizer, and Uranus is the planet in this case that its principle comes to the fore, and Uranus represents illumination or awakening or sudden action, something unexpected. So at the moment of that, also be aware that Mars is on, you can call any planet, whatever two planets are on either side of a planet. So Mars, in this case, having Saturn and Pluto, is contained. They're acting as its sort of guards, shall we say. That I won't go too deeply into this, but it doesn't matter how much distance. In other words, Jupiter is containing Saturn along with Mars. So a planet can both be contained, but it can also be part of the container. So that's a bit complicated, but just be aware of that. Anyway, the main point is that any planet that's contained, but more specifically behind Pluto. Pluto's small, from a physics standpoint. You go, well, it's just a small planet, like big deal, yeah, it's like as small as your pineal gland. That's how small it is. It's true. There's parts of your body that are rather small, but they're rather vital, aren't they? Yes, vital. So don't get into size. That physics, linear deduction about how astrology works. That's why physicists can't figure it out. It's kind of like a little bit dumb that, it's like, look, it's metaphysics, and physics don't, we're not dismissing physics, but you're dismissing metaphysics. The solar system works as a whole, and the whole is where, all the parts are part of a whole. So you don't get into big and small anymore. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, the heart in your body is rather small too. So Pluto, doesn't matter how big it is, okay? Make no mistake. It's that powerful planet. And so any planet connected to Pluto is in the evolutionary, under what's called the evolutionary impulse. That's how powerful Pluto is. It's like the needle on the record in a lot of ways, quite frankly. It's kind of harsh, but necessary for the music, if you like. It's a way of saying it. Now, any planet close to, but let's say Mars is approaching conjunction with Pluto, it shows it's approaching that evolutionary impulse. So let's go a little further now. We're in mid-April, 1 month from now. The sun by then is in Aries, conjuncting Chiron, right? Uranus. Now let's go a few more weeks ahead. Okay. Now what happened? The reason it jumped is because the sun, over the course of that week, entered Taurus. So that's why you had the jump. Okay, I know that gets a little confusing sometimes, but just be patient with yourself in understanding what we're looking at. We're always taking it from the perspective of the sun. It can be a little hard at first to understand some of these things, I appreciate, but I'm hopefully going as quickly on one hand, but as slowly on the other to make it understandable for you, to at least have an experience of what you're looking at, okay? Not to have a complete takeaway in terms of full understanding? No, you don't. Even astrologers would be discussing this at length, quite frankly, if it was a reason, there was a reason to, okay? It takes time. There's lots of information in symbolic, in archetypal symbols, okay? Now, okay, what we're seeing now as of May the 1st, okay, the sun is well into Taurus. Look at Uranus at 29, so you know about, and there's Chiron still at 0. So what that's showing, why I want to show you this partially, is because 0 can, you know, it's like the alpha of the cycle through a sign, and 29 is like the omega, the alpha and the omega, and Chiron and Uranus are therefore playing a key role as well. So Chiron is entered the new sign of Aries, that initiative-oriented, pioneering first sign of the zodiac, Aries, representing a whole new thrust of humanity really entering into a new realization. And I showed you before, the sun conjunct Uranus at that time was significant. It shows like an awakening. There's some kind of an awakening on our doorstep. And Mars, in that evolutionary impulse connected to Pluto, shows that, you know, it's not necessarily going to be an easy one. It shows that we're going to really have to exercise will and, you know, a very healthy, spirited attitude of determination. But it's an overcoming, okay? So it's not like I want to say the world's about to end. It's nothing like that. It's just that, but on the, you know, global, already we're seeing that, of course, in this day and age with all of the drama of the dawning of this age of Aquarius, etc., which again is something I'll explain more at another time. But let's just watch Uranus finally here. Watch as I go. Oh, watch. See how Mercury over the course of 1 week moves so closely, and watch another click. There it was. Now, so Uranus, there it is on May 15th. That's the day Uranus enters Taurus. At the time, Mercury was conjuncted. That's a pretty good aspect, actually. And sure enough, there was a new moon just on the eve. Now, watch this. This is what I want to show you. And there's another really important factor. Watch this. Look at Mars again at 29. So I'm going to back up by hours now, or days at this point, days. Just going to go back 1 day. See, on the 14th of May, Uranus is at 29 Aries, okay, and look at Mars, 29 Capricorn. This time, on the other side of Pluto, that's a better situation, by the way. It's like, okay, we've gone through the, you know, icebreaker. We're no longer quite green, shall we say. We're a bit into the game now. We've got some coordination and momentum going on. Okay, good. But the 29 and 29 of both cardinal signs represents a square aspect, a powerful dynamic turning point principle that we're all going to experience in a, you know, general way. So the key thing to understand now is I'm going to move by hours, watch Uranus. Okay, we're going to go just by, okay, I'm going to go by a day. No, I'm going to go by hours. Sorry. It's hard to decipher how quickly to go ahead, but we're just going to go by hours. See, Uranus clicked to 57, but it's so slow. I'm clicking quite a bit and it's still there, but it's at 29:58. Watch the new moon now. Watch also this. That's the new moon. Watch when the moon approaches new. It's going to do it probably. See that? Look at 29:59. That's rather significant. It's the last minute of Aries. Okay, this is what something I want to show you. So I'm actually weaving two little demo, videos here into one story. Now watch. There we go. See the moon at 24 with the sun? I'm going to go by, well, at this point, I'm going to go by minutes. See how I can do that? Isn't that great? So the ancient astrologers would have went gaga over this, and, well, we are. So I'm just clicking it up there, and there is the new moon at 35, 36. Look at that, 35. That's the new moon. It just jumped. You saw it jump there. See the moon change position. So basically, at around this time of May 15th, the day Uranus enters Aries, just as the sun, there's a new moon in Taurus. Okay, basically that's your takeaway. Okay, new moon Taurus, yay. Okay, but what else was going on in the whole chart? Okay, what's the picture on the seed packet, as I mentioned earlier? And the main takeaway here is Uranus at 29, Aries, squaring Mars at 29, Capricorn. So from the beginning of this talk today, you heard me talk about 29-degree angles and, that omega point, that overcoming, that crossing the border, that critical point, something to overcome is the main thing to get with a 29-degree planet. When they're in transit, it's not as evident as if it's natal, or say you began a business, okay, and you signed on a certain day, and that day had a planet at 29 degrees. Well, you might have signed on a bad day. It might not be so great. However, it could be just that your business needed that impulse and it worked really well. It really is a case-to-case situation. You want to really remember that. It's nothing exactly pat. There's core principles to astrology, but you can't make pat statements about things like that. All right, you have to really judge every case on its own ground. That's the main thing. So, as it is, we have a new moon in Taurus on mid-May, May 15th, just shy of 2 months from now. But we have this dynamic aspect of Mars-Uranus, and that very day, I can even move it by minutes at this point because Uranus is, it's a slow, far planet, right? Because it's far, it's slow in its orbit from the Earth's perspective. But watch it just by minutes moving from 29:59. I'm going to have to click it quite a bit because it takes a while. You'll notice the moon's moving fairly quickly. Every click is moving, it's like 1 minute at a time, of course. So this might take a little longer than I thought. Okay. I'm just going to go actually by hour. So watch Uranus. Yeah, that was, okay, there it is, right there. Basically, it showed not roughly 5 p.m. in Greenwich, a little earlier probably. It entered, as a matter of fact, I can just look at my pocket astrologer and I can see that, but I didn't know we were going to go this far, so I didn't get that far yet. But I can and I will, and I'll just show on the 15th, yeah, sure enough, Uranus, according to this, enters at... well, interestingly enough, it's 6:23 in the PM, but we'll make sure of this. Yeah, it's no, it's wrong. It's 8:23 a.m. in the Pacific time zone specifically. So anyway, you get the main point, though, is that, see, again, you have to determine what time it is where you are when a planet enters a new sign. It's going to be different in another place. So it doesn't make the planet entering a new sign different. It's just time zone realities, of course. Okay, so the big thing here is the sun. We had that new moon. Then the same day, Uranus enters Taurus. But the moment of the new moon, you had a 29-degree Uranus squaring Mars and all of the dramatic dynamic implications implied there. But also, when Uranus enters Taurus, that ingress principle, you still have the sun-moon conjunction. So it's like a new moon principle. So there's some new energy moving in, folks, guaranteed. In the course of the spring, we're going to see, we're already, those paying attention are seeing it. It's probably because Taurus has to do with money. There's a new economic impulse. We've been seeing this with Bitcoin and the markets up and down these days. And, who's an economist to know all these things? And it's everybody's best guess. And, I've heard experts that were wrong many times about the economy. And we don't really, there's a lot of mystery there, really. But the main point, though, is the likelihood of synchronicity. That's what astrology is all about so much, is that synchronicity. So get ready, because in the spring of 2018, with all these dynamic activities, we are sure to experience the repercussions. Now, admittedly, when Uranus enters Taurus, the sign of personal wealth and money, it brings about change, but will be there for, I mentioned earlier that Uranus would enter in 2019. The reason that I said that in part is because Uranus will enter Taurus, but it will turn retrograde and go back into Aries for a while in the winter next year, from late autumn, or basically winter 2018-19. Just the basic understanding there. Okay, but the fact that it enters in Taurus for the first official time here, May 15th, 2018, is the key point, the takeaway. That's its official entry and even if it does retrograde and go back into Aries. Okay. It's another layer that when it does that, but still the official is there. So there you go. And at the time, of course, there's Mars at 29. And so that overcoming, and what it's basically suggesting is that this economic challenge probably, or change at least, is going to basically push us all a little harder to, and we all would love to know and how, and if we can work smarter than harder. And that's always one of the big aspects of the game on the material ground. How do I work smarter, not harder? And that's it's up for grabs as to what constitutes the wisdom there. And again, you have to judge that on a case-to-case level because there's different destinies at play and so on. So I'm going to leave it there and trust that there was some pretty good insights in there for you that taught you a lot, again, in an experiential way about some of how astrology works, but also you got a series of key takeaways and to understand over the course of literally the coming couple of months anyway. And so I'll be making more of these probably in the meantime, but over the course of time. So, and also please leave comments in the YouTube page on my channel. And thanks for subscribing, and thanks for being here. Okay, see you next time.